in the middle of getting going. Now we're on. So boiches, for instance, which there's no actual out of pocket for the victim, we would not collect on. And in this case, Adam ba'Adam, we wouldn't collect on either because it's not shchiach. And Rava made a distinction that even in this case, shar b'shar, you don't collect if it's a tam, because in order for it to become a muad, you would need also a bezdin to hear a testimony 3 times that the animal stoist. But something that's a muad mitchilasai, such as if an ox, chewed the hand of a child, which is shein. So shein v'regel, which is muad mitchilasai, such a psak, bezdin would be able to do using a mechanism of shlichusayu kavdinan. We're not really the best. We're just doing the shlichus of the best. And using that mechanism, but the dinim will paskin on things that are shchiach and there's a loss of money on such a shein v'regel, and as well as the main thing is haidois v'halvois. If there's a discussion of someone owes somebody else money, those are the types of halachas that Besdin will still paskin on nowadays. Okay, now we're up to tsar. So tsar, according to the example that the Mishnah gave for tsar is if he used a spit that was heated up that he burnt him with, or with a nail. So for Gemara, the following shaila: tsar shaloi b'makim nezek mishtalim. It seems like our Mishnah holds that even though there's no damage, if someone gets burnt on his nail, it doesn't disable him in any way, but it does cause a great amount of pain. So if there's an infliction of pain that has no damage whatsoever, would there still be a chiyuv to pay tsar? Or maybe if there's a damage that's mechuyev to be paid for, then you pay for the tsar as well. But a damage that's tsar only, there you don't necessarily pay for. So our Mishnah says that tsar without nezek, because the examples that the Mishnah gave of tsar were the pain of a burn, but it doesn't damage him in any way that he wouldn't be able to do anything. Therefore, it's a chiddush that in such a case you pay tsar as well. Mantana. Who is a Tana that holds like this? Because in fact, it's not unanimous. Amar Rava ben Azahi. It's the Shita ben Azahi, the Tanya Rabbi Omer. It says in the pasuk, Kviya Nemer Tchila. So let's actually see what the pasuk actually says. It says Kviya Tachas Kviya. So that's mentioned first in the pasuk. Petza Tachas Patza and Chabura Tachas Chabura. We're going to be focusing on Kviya Tachas Kviya and Chabura Tachas Chabura. Petza Tachas Patza, the Gemara will tell us later, as it told us yesterday as well, what we do with Petza Tachas Patza. We're focusing on Kviya Tachas Kviya and Chabura Tachas Chabura. So Kviya is a pain, a burn, and Chabura Tachas Chabura is if someone gets hit, where there's obviously damage. So Zok to Gemara, the Tanya we looked in the Brayso, Rabbi Yomer Kviya Nemer Tchila. It says Kviya in the pasuk first, and we're going to see what that means. Does that tell me that pain without damage is chayiv or potter? That's what the Gemara is going to discuss. It says Chabura first. Now, right off the bat, we just looked at the pasuk. It does not say Chabura Tchila. It says Kviya Tchila. So we're going to have to see what this means. Exactly what is Rebbe and Ben Azai arguing about as to if Kviya is Nemer Tchila or if Chabura is Nemer Tchila. Zok Gemara, let's suggest the following. Rebbe Savar, Kviya, the less B'Chabura Mash. If you look at the words Kviya Tachas Kviya without anything else, the assumption is that it's a burn without Chabura. No damage, but tsar only. That's the default meaning of Kviya Tachas Kviya. Therefore, because of Rachmana Chabura, the Torah then adds the second damage of Chabura Tachas Chabura, Legluya Allah de Kviya, to tell us that don't misinterpret Kviya, that there's no Nezek, there's just Tsar, but no, it has to be a Kviya similar to a Chabura. The Isba Chabura in Eloi. If the pain is accompanied with Chabura, with a damage, only there will there be a Chiyuv to pay the damages of Tsar as well. Tsar alone you don't pay for. Benazi takes it from a 180-degree opposite position. And he says, Kviya is bechabur mashma. By default, Kviya does involve a chabur. The burn causes some problem that now he's worth less in the shul. So that's the default of Kviya. So why did the Torah repeat chabura tachas chabura? Because of echmana chabura, l'gliya Allah the Kviya, the less b'chabura. The Torah gives another example of pain with damage to tell us that chabur tachas chabura means with damage, but Kviya means even without damage. So the Gemara wants to say that our Mishnah is going according to Banazai and not according to Rebbe. Masgaflar who said that this is how you interpret the Brisa? The Brisa is very cryptic. All the Brisa says is Kfiyah Nemer Tchila, according to Rebbe, and Banazai is Chabur Nemer Tchila. And you're, because of how you're understanding it, you're explaining that Rebbe holds you don't pay for tsar unless there's nezek, and Banazai holds you pay for tsar even though there's no nezek. But not necessarily is that the way to interpret this brisa. First of all, it's much more mistaber to say that our brisa agrees with Rebbe, because normally Rebbe would be a stam mishnah. So therefore, let's look at it from a different perspective. Rebbe, what did Rebbe mean when he said kfiyah number tchila? Savar, the opposite. Kfiyah disba chabura mashma. Kfiyah by default would be interpreted that it's only with nezek. Therefore, cause of Rahman Chabura, Ligluya Allah, to tell us the Kviya, the less Chabura. So let's go back to Rebbe's words. When Rebbe said Kviya number Tchila, what he meant was, now that it says Chabura, Tachas Chabura, it teaches us that Kviya must mean without a Chabura, which would then make him consistent with our Mishnah. Chabura number Tchila. It says Chabur first, meaning by default we would assume, not by default. It means Chabur Never Tchila is the maskana is that Chabur teaches us that Kviya Dafka, if it has damages, is there a chiv to pay for the tsar? But if there's no damages, there's no chiv to pay for the tsar. Therefore, Sover he holds Kviya the less Chabur Mashma. Kviya, its pashtus understanding is the less Chabura, and cause of Rachmana Chabura, Ligluya Allah the Kviya the Isbe Chabur. In Eloi. And then Vamaskana Kaimi. So then when Rabbi said Kviya Nemer Tchila, what he really means to say is after you have Chabura Tachas Chabura, it tells us that Kviya means without any damage. And Benazis Chabura Nemer Tchila, after it says both, it teaches us in fact that Kviya is with damage. And at least now, thank you so much, at least now Rebbe will be consistent with our Mishnah. Or Inami, or maybe you could look at the whole brisa between Rebbe and Benazai completely differently. And maybe the Chula Alma Kriya, being the Isba Chabura, being the Lesba Chabura Masha. Maybe everybody agrees that the initial understanding of the word Kriya is even if it does not have a Chabura. V'hacha, so what is the machlokes between Rebbe and Benazai as to whether or not Kviya is bechabura or not? It's bechlal leprat hamiruchaken zemi zekamivli. Kviya, it means pain, any type of pain. Kviya is a klal. Chabura tachas chabura is already defining the klal. Only if there's damage involved. The problem is if chabura tachas chabura is a prat in related to the klal of kviya tachas kviya, there's a word in between. Petzet tachas potza. So that's a klal prat hamiruchakim zemizeh. If you would be able to learn it as a klal prat, then kviya tachas kviya is the klal. The prat is chabura tachas chabura. You only pay for kviya where there is a chabura, where there is nezek. But if you hold klal prat hamiruchakim zemizeh, you do not darshan. Well, then kviya and chabura are two different things. And kviya tachas kviya tells you even without nezek. So Zoktimar beklalu prat hamiruchakim zemizeh kamivim. Rabbi Sover ain't done in Isai Buchlalu Prat. And therefore, Kviya Tachas Kviya remains standing even though there's no damages. With Nazi Sover done in Isai Buchlalu Prat. And therefore, Chabura Tachas Khabura defines Kviya Tachas Kviya that it only applies when there's damages. For Ekta Gemara, according to Rabbi, that it's not a Klalu Prat and Kviya Tachas Kviya and Chabura Tachas Khabura are two independent items. I know what we learn. Kviya tachas kviya, that tsar alone is chayiv. But what is the Torah teaching us? with the words chabura tachas chabura. V'chitema chabura l'Rebbe lamali. Zok Gemara l'damim yiseirim, for extra money. There's a machlokes Rashi and Tosfos how to understand damim yiseirim. Tosfos tells us, Rashi tells us, the likes of elo kviya tachas kviya. If the Torah only taught us kviya tachas kviya, hava amrinon. What I would have said is ben ispe chabura, ben les chabura. Regardless, you always pay the make kviya mishalim. Meaning, I would have thought that if you have a chabura that has with it pain, you only pay the tsar, and you don't pay the nezek. You would have thought that in a case where you have both nezek and tsar, you only pay the tsar, and you don't pay the nezek. So, Frek Dovi, why in the world would I think that? And that's exactly what Tosfos' comment on Rashi is, why he doesn't like Rashi. So, Tosfos, Pierce Bekuntris, I'm on the second Tosfos of the Amid. The Eloi Ksiv Elakviya Havamina Afilu Isle Chabura. The mekviyahu the mishalom of tarteloi mishalom. Kamashulon the mishalom tarvayu tsar b'makom nezek. They nearly read. The re doesn't understand why you need a pasuk for that. The tsar b'makom nezek nafkulam mipetzatachas potza. We're going to soon see that petzatachas potza is a pasuk which is right in the same pasuk. The Gemara learns from there that you pay tsar b'makom nezek. If you pay tsar b'makom nezek, you're obviously paying nezek. So why do I need a pasuk to tell us that? So therefore, Tosfos says that the chiddush of Nodam Yisrael is a completely new svara. The oid is really exactly Dovi's kasha. The lama how you loymar. Why in the world would I ever think shatzar yiftar es hanesek v'saripui? Why would I think that just because there's an additional element of tsar that should pater me from paying the nezek? Right, that was really Dovi's kasha. The near Levi emphasizes l'damim Yisrael shemishalim b'tzar sheyesh lo roishim yoser. Believe it or not, there's a greater tsar to a victim if there's actually nezek with it as well. Why is there more pain to a victim if there's nezek with it as well? Even though technically I'm not feeling a higher intensity pain. So what does it mean there's more tsar? Because if his hand is cut off, versus his hand not being cut off, just being burnt, he has pain, emotional pain, that now he's not going to have a hand. So that extra pain, the chiddush is you pay tsar b'makom nezek, meaning you even include the pain and suffering of the fact that now in his mind he realizes that he's going to lose a hand. That's a distress. That's also a punitive damage that you will be mechayiv to pay. And that's why it says chabura tachas chabura, that if there's greater pain to the person because of the fact that now he looks and he says he has no hand, that also is payable. So that's that kind of extra chiddush. Zok the Hedel Gemara. Oimdim kama odom kayoytze v'zeh roitze lito. You know, when you learn all about chabura, we think back to the days when we were in yeshiva and we would have to say a chabura, right? And now you know why it's called a chabura. Because we would literally destroy the Gemara. And there would be a lot of tsar involved too. And boishes. Okay, Zog to Gemara. Tsar b'makom nezek heichi shamina. How do you assess pain b'makom nezek? How is it done? How do you make that assessment? Amar Avu Shmuel. So Avu Shmuel said, Oimdin kama odem roitze litoil liktoya lo yad. Liktoya lo yadai. How much would a person be willing, if I tell him, I want to chop your hand off, I'm willing to pay you any money in the world if you allow me to chop your hand off. What would it be? Zok Gemara, that's not a good example, because there's not only tsar, so when someone asks me, how much would I want to charge for my hand to be chopped off, I'm calculating all 5 damages. No one's going to come over to me and says, no, I just want to pay you for the tsar portion. How much is that? No, a person doesn't make that assessment. A person will see how much is it worth for him. The second thing is there anybody in their right mind that would actually come up with a number for which he would be willing to allow his hand to be chopped off for? Are we speaking about idiots? Nobody, even a poor person, would even sell their hand for billions of dollars. Maybe a kidney, but definitely not a hand. So that cannot be how you assess it. Ella, l'ktoya yodai hakatua. Let's say someone's hand, Rahman Litzlan, is severed. However, Zok Rashi, but it's umuchuberish begitten tzmusin. It's still hanging from threads, from sinews. There ain't a real ilam. So this hand is really useless. The nezek is done. Now the question is, cutting it off to sever it would cause him great pain. How much would he be willing to allow them to cut it off completely, even though it causes him pain? It's the same thing. Nami there might not be nezek, but there's still the element of boishus involved. We need a way to isolate just the payment of tsar. How do you do that? And the why is there boishus? Because there are people who would be very uncomfortable to see their own limb being thrown to the dogs. So how do we isolate just the payment of tsar? What if, someone is under Muslim Sharia law, and for some reason it was ruled against him that they're going to cut his hand off? But the ruling was that they're going to cut it off in a painless way using sam. What if they say, we're willing to pay you money if you let us just chop your hand off without any type of painkiller? And that's the amount that it would be. Zog to Gemara, Amri hachanami, loy shakol u'mitzar nafshi. No one would ever accept any payment, no matter what it was, to allow himself to be inflicted with such terrible pain. That's like somebody going into surgery, into hip replacement surgery, and they ask him, how much would you be willing to do the operation without anesthesia? Nobody in their right mind would do that. Ella, oimdin, the assessment is made, kama adaroitza litein liktoyla yoda amuchtav malchus ben sayef lesam. The question is, Fakir, Nachman Laslan was nixer on him that they're going to chop his hand off with a sword. That's excruciating pain. How much would he be willing to pay off the executioner, the person who's going to be carrying out this sentence? How much would he be willing to bribe the guy so that the guy should do it with anesthesia? How much is he willing to pay to avoid pain? Now that makes sense already. But the problem is, then it's not like the Gemara says, Kama Adam writes a little, how much I would be willing to accept. It should be, the question is, how much am I willing to pay to prevent that pain? Means to transfer money from party A to party B. So that's it. When it says litoil, it means how much is this person willing to allow the executioner to accept in a bribe in order that the executioner should carry out the sentence with inflicting no pain. Everybody knows the famous story about this man who calls up a dentist and says, how much do you charge for a root canal? So the dentist says, a root canal is $2,500. So the man says, $2,500? Where in the world am I going to find $2,500 for this root canal? Dentist, is there anything that you could do to somehow reduce the charges? Because I simply can't afford $2,500. So the dentist asks him, tell me, sir, how are you with pain? Could you handle a little bit of pain? He said, yeah, no, I think I can handle pain. So he says, out of the $2,500, $1,000 is just for anesthesia. If I lighten up on the anesthesia, you might feel a little bit of a buzz, but I could save you $500. So the man says, that's perfect, doctor. Now we're down to $2,000. But thinking about it more, I don't have $2,000 either. Can't you find some way to further reduce the cost? So the dentist asks him, if you're really good with pain, I could completely eliminate the entire anesthesia, and then I could bring the cost down to $1,500. So the man says, great. But once again, he says, but I don't have $1,500 either. So he said, okay, you know what we could do? The professional fee for a root canal is $1,000. If you want, I can hook you up with a student who's just learning how to do root canals. He won't charge because he's learning on you, but there's still going to be a facility fee of $500. There's no way I can arrange a root canal for you for any less than $500. So he says, $500 for a root canal, that's great. Book my wife in for tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. So that's how you assess the tsar. Zok Gemara weiter. Ripui hikahu chayiv l'rafos. If you hurt somebody, you have to pay his doctor's bills to get him back on his feet. Tanu Rabban. Alu boy tzmochim machmas hamaka. I want to just raise an important point. If your doctor says that you have to avoid certain foods, avoid sugar, avoid carbs, and it's not healthy for you to eat, and you don't listen to the doctor, you break your diet, you eat what you're not supposed to do, is that called rebelling and not listening to the doctor? And because of that, your whatever you suffer is 100% your fault. What would you say? You'll say no. Why?
He agrees with the doctor. He just can't help himself.
We're going to see the Gemara says like that. Even if the doctor says, don't eat those sweets, don't eat those cakes, don't eat that salt, and you can't control yourself and you eat it, that's not called not listening to the doctor. It's called what Duvi says. Yeah, I'm listening, but. We're going to see that's a very legitimate argument. I was very excited when I saw this Gemara. I wonder if that's going to help my blood sugar levels, but at least I don't have to feel guilty. So let's see what it says here in the Gemara. Tanu Rabban. Alu boy tzmachim machmas hamaka. Tzmachim is rash, boils, whatever it is, it's an infection. His makkah is getting infected. Vinistera hamaka. And the makkah got once again inflamed. Chayiv l'rafoisoi, the mazik has to pay for that as well. And v'chayiv litin loy demei shevtoi. He also has to pay now the additional days of work that this victim will now miss. What if it's shaloi machmas hamaka? What if the infection was unrelated to the makkah? Then einay chayiv l'rafoisoi. Then the mazik, of course, doesn't have to pay the doctor's bills, and therefore v'einay chayiv litin loy demei shevtoi. He doesn't have to pay for his loss of wages as well. This is the first shita of three shitas. Rabbi Yehuda, shita number 2. Omer, af machmas hamaka chayiv l'rafoisoi. Even if this infection can be tied back to the original wound, you pay ripui on a relapse. You do not pay shevis. And the third sheet is an extreme. Shiftoi urefuosoi kol shechayiv b'sheves chayiv v'ripui. Only when you're chayiv to pay for his lost wages, that is the litmus test that tells us that it's the responsibility of the mazik, and therefore he'll have to pay the doctor's bills as well. But v'she'enei chayiv b'sheves, einei chayiv v'ripui. So the Tanakam holds you pay both. Rabbi Yehuda holds you pay ripui and not sheves. And the Chum say if I'm not paying ripui, if I'm not paying sheves, I'm not paying ripui either. So b'ma'kom miflim. Exactly what is the machlokes as to whether or not the mazik should be liable to pay this ripui and this sheves. Amar Rabba, Ashke Chasinu l'Rabbanon b'vei Rab, the Yosy the Kamri. I met the Rabbanon b'vei Rab, I met the Rabbanon b'Beis Medrash, and this is how they interpreted at least the machlokes between the Tanakam and Rabbi Yehuda. The Kamri hacha b'maka nitna la'eged kamim. Of course, if it has to do with the wound, he has to pay. Everybody agrees. If it doesn't have to do with the wound, he doesn't pay. But here, what happened is when someone is in pain, if you tie and bandage up a wound tightly, that will relieve the pain a little bit. But it will also lead to infection because now no air can get to it. And therefore, the question is the victim allowed to bandage up his wound tightly so that it should relieve his pain, even though it will create a health risk, and will the mazik be chayav for a health risk that was really created from the fact that the victim tied it up too tight and irritated his own wound. Rabbanan Savri, maked nitna la'eged. A person's allowed to bandage his hand to relieve the pain, and therefore both sheves and ripui have to be paid. Rabbi Yehuda Savri, maked loy nitna la'eged. The victim does not have a right to do something that's detrimental to the healing process, even to reduce his pain. Therefore, ripui ditana bekra, ripui where it says twice virapoi, yirape, pay. There, mechayiv, he'll be mechayiv to pay, even though this wound was irritated by the actions of the victim himself. But sheves the loitana bekra, It only says rak shifta yitain, but it doesn't say it twice. Therefore, loy mechayev, we won't make him pay for the lost wages of a wound that got irritated because of the action of the victim. V'aminu lahu ana. Rabbi said, I don't like this pshat because imakala nitila agid. If I'm not allowed to bandage a makkah because it's going to irritate it, then there should be no liability at all on the mazik's part if the nizik self-inflicted this irritation, and therefore ripui nami loy mechai. Therefore, I'm going to understand this machlokes referring to a different case. Everybody holds someone's in intense pain. He's allowed to bandage up his hand to reduce that pain, but go easy. He bandaged it up very, very tight. Maybe that's a little bit more soothing, but that's too much already. So yes, a victim could bandage his arm, and even if that irritates the wound, the mazik is still chayav to pay. But he went overboard. When he went overboard, there'll be a question of will the mazik be liable to pay? Since he didn't have a right to bandage it up so tightly, now the mazik is no longer liable for it. Therefore, ripoy the tanabe kra, ripoy where it says twice v'rapoy yerapei mechayev will make the mazik pay, even though this wound, this irritation is very much self-inflicted by the nizik for bandaging himself up too tight. But sheves the tanabe kra, sheves which is only mentioned once, loy mechayev. You don't pay at all. Rabban Savri, even the tanabe kra b'ripoy, since the Torah is megala by ripoy, that the mazik has to pay, even though the nizik over bandaged himself. We learn from ripoy to sheves. They're in the same pasuk. A sheves nami mechayev. Rabbi tells us that not only will he be chayav for ripoy, he'll be chayav for sheves as well, which was the tamakama. The ishkis to ripoy, because there's a hekesh from sheves to ripoy. They're obviously in the same pasuk. Rabbi Yehuda Savar sheves loy mechayev. Yes, there's a hekesh, but sheves the Torah is megala. No, don't pay sheves. The Maite Rachman, it says rak shifta yite. So sheves is mentioned with a rak, with a miut, that you will not pay sheves in this case. V'Rabbanan rak. What do the Rabbanan do with the rak? Because the Rabbanan hold that you do pay sheves. You pay sheves and ripoy. So Hilan's rak l'shaloi machmas hamaka huda also. That's only if the wound came completely not machmas the maka. And Rashi just gives us a hint, and I'm stressing it because I'm going to use it in my defense. What does it mean? It happened shaloi machmas hamaka. Zok Rashi sha'avar al divrei roife. How do we know it didn't come because of the maka? Because it's the victim himself, the patient, did not follow instructions of the doctor. Kidem afarish lakaman. Ularabban basroi, and according to Rabban Basroi, holds you don't pay ripoy or sheves. Darmi kol shechai v'sheves chai v'ripoy. V'chol she'ini chai v'sheves ini chai v'ripoy. Ripoy the tanabe kra lamali. Why does the Torah say ripoy twice? Because according to the Rabbanon, you're not paying anything, not ripoy, not sheves. So why does it say v'rapoy yerapei? Dr. Gemara mi boile l'chedetanya the Rabbi Shmuel, the Tanya the Rabbi Shmuel. Omer, he said v'rapoy yerapei mekan shenitin reshus l'roife l'rapois. From here, you see a roife can give refuahs. So we have our three-way machlokes. But this line, v'rapoy yerapei mekan shenitin reshus l'roife l'rapois, is an unbelievable statement. And the Ramban elaborates on this statement at the end of Parshas Bechukoisai, because there the Torah is saying that if you listen to my mitzvahs, I'm going to make it good for you. And the Ramban elaborates and says that people who consult with Nevi'im have no business consulting with a doctor, because their refuahs are l'mayla min hateva. They're controlled by the mitzvahs and by Averis. So when they have an Aver, they're supposed to go to the Navi. And the Ramban over there quotes a pasuk where there was a tefillah on somebody. I don't remember who the tefillah was on, but the pasuk says he did not go to the Navi and he went to the doctor. So that he didn't go to the Navi, Dr. Ramban, is reasonable. Why he was admonished for it, but that he went to why is it an Aver to go to the doctor? They're both. The teretz is someone on the Madrega to go to a Navi and to learn from the Navi and to correct his ways and get a refuah that way. it's a terrible lack of betachon. It's a terrible avera to go to a doctor. And the Ramban elaborates on that when you're on that madrega, it's an avera, it's an avla to go to a doctor. So of course there's always these kooks who say, no, I don't go to the doctor. I don't go to the doctor. I'm going to do tshuva. So the poskim are very clear about it. I shouldn't say kooks because there's a lot of discussion about this. But the poskim, Rabbi Yosef and Moshe, which we discussed a couple of days ago, says beferish that if someone doesn't want to go to the doctor, you drag him and you force him to go to the doctor. Because even the Ramban's Lashon himself, who is not allowed to go to a doctor? Someone who consults with Nevi'im. When you're consulting with Nevi'im, you don't have to go to a doctor. Kamshio told me over once from a Rosh Yeshiva that I will only throw out a boy from yeshiva for two reasons: for Gilui Aroyos and for Gilui Eliyahu. Someone who's consulting with Nevi'im, that's the guy who I'm going to be throwing out of my yeshiva. So Avada, the huge chiddush of the Ramban, that refuahs should not be handled by doctors, that's for people on that madrega, of course. But there's a lot of Torah in Sifrei Halacha about how to approach medicine that involves the discussion of the Ramban. Tanu Rabbanim, Minayim Shim Olu B'Tzmachim Machmas Hamaka. How do you know that if irritation occurred because of the makkah? V'nister hamaka, and now the makkah got infected. Shechayev l'rafoisai, that the mazik has to pay for the refuah, and v'chayev litn l'shefta, and he also has to pay for his lost wages. Tamaloi mirak shifta yitain v'rapoy rapay. So the rapoy rapay says that he has to pay, and through the hekesh, it teaches us the chevis as well. Yochel afilu shaloi machmas hamaka. I would have thought even if it came shaloi machmas hamaka that the mazik has to pay. Tabaloi mirak. If it's shaloi machmas hamaka, then of course the mazik doesn't have to pay. It wasn't caused by him. Sorry. We're going to soon see. Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda Omer, af machmas hamaka potter. Even if it happened machmas hamaka potter. So he's taking a stance that's the opposite of your default. Shenem rak. Ikadamri af machmas hamaka potter lagamri. There are those who understand that when Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, said that af machmas hamaka it's potter, it means af machmas hamaka potter lagamri k'rabbanan. So if it's totally in the machlokes Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda, so machmas hamaka means he tied it too tight, and he didn't have a right to tie it too tight. So if it's machmas hamaka potter lagamri k'rabbanan, which is like the second Rabbanan, maybe that's what he holds, like Rabbanan Basroi, because Amri af machmas hamaka potter misheves v'chayev v'rifui. That's like Rabbi Yehuda command kavua. So that means Rabbi Yosy bar Yehuda is taking on the position of his father. Okay, Gavalta. Amar Yochel, I would think I feel shaloi machmas hamaka, even if it's shaloi machmas halaka, Talmud loy mirak. So now the Gemara asks Dovi's question. I don't understand. Shaloi machmas hamaka boikra. If it's not caused from the makkah, do I need a pasuk to say that the mazik is potter? Why is the mazik chayiv? Why should the mazik be chayiv to pay for a guy who got a cold when he cut his toe off? What shaykhis does that have? Amri zok the Gemara. You know what it means? Shaloi machmas hamaka kidetanya. Hareisha over al divrei roifei. The doctor told him, stay away from sweets. Don't eat honey. Carbs are not good for you. Your blood sugar is high. V'achal dvash. And then he went and ate honey. I call mini misika, or he ate other carbohydrates, sugars that he wasn't allowed to eat. You see, they had diabetes in those days as well, right? Because we know if someone's blood sugar levels are high, it stops healing. And because of that, the hela makasa gurgusni, his makas became gangrene, and that's really a great danger. I would have thought that the mazik has to pay for that as well. Talmud loy mirak, but without rak, I would have actually thought that the mazik is liable. Why? Zokt Rashi. No, the Gemara doesn't say. It's not considered such a bad thing. It's not considered such a rebellion, such not listening, because everybody sometimes has difficulty following the strict instructions of the doctor. My Gurgusni, what is Gurgusni? Amarbaya Nasa Krichta, which I believe is gangrene. Rashi's Basar Mace, which is gangrene. My Asuse, how do you heal it? Ahala, Vikira, Vikalba. So I don't know what these things are. They're all types of substances.
Oh, wow.
Kira is wax, that I know. Kalba is something in the wine.
Resin. There's
Alloy?
aloe, wax, and resin.
Okay. So these three things help for gangrene. Okay, Zok the Gemara. The Amar lay. What if the Mazik says, you know what, I'm a doctor, I'm a do-it-yourselfer, I don't want to pay expensive medical bills, I'll already heal you. The Amar, that's exactly what the Gemara says. The Amar Ashichana, Amar will tell him, you, Damas Alai, carry Abba. I look at you like a lion that's waiting to pounce on me. You're the last person that I'm going to allow to heal me. The Amar lay, my Sina Asya, the Muggin, I'm going to bring you a doctor from Hamilton who he's going to give me a better price. Amar lay, he'll say, Asya the Muggin, a doctor who doesn't charge Muggin Shove. He's worth what you get what you pay for, so to speak. So I'm not interested in your cheap witch doctors. I want to go to a proper doctor, to a proper clinic. The Amar Masina Lach Asya Rechika. So Muggin means a doctor from far who's going to do it for free. What if I'm going to get you a doctor who'll give it to you discount? I don't know. Probably. Because halacha, you're supposed to go to the best doctor. Halacha, you're mechuyev to go to the best doctor. You're not allowed to go to someone who's not the best doctor. There's a lot of Torah on refuah, but halacha l'maisa, when someone is sick, you're mechuyev to seek out the biggest doctor. Why? Because you have to be memayit tenes. In the refuah, there's always nisim involved. But the better doctor you use, the less of a nes it is. You're asking Hashem to make less of a change to teva to heal you. Right? If you want to have something done in Branson Hospital, you know, the figurative Branson Hospital, then you're asking for a big nace to come out alive, right? But if you go to Sunnybrook, to Amalei, Damas like Amalei, Asherichika, Eina Avira. You know what a doctor that doesn't charge a lot from far away, he's going to blind my eye. You know why? Because once he's gone, he has a tailpipe warranty. Once the fumes from his tailpipe evaporate as he leaves the call, the warranty expires. So I don't need that. So how about if the victim was a do-it-yourselfer? The Amalei, hey, havli lididi. You know what? Just give me the cash. Instead of me sending my car to your repair shop, give me the cash and I will get my own repair shop. Amalei, the Mazik can say, no way. So what's going to be? You're going to go, I'm going to give you cash. You're not going to get healed, and then you're going to come back for more. I don't need that. I want to send you to a doctor who's going to fix it the first time. Cheap is expensive. The Amalei, no problem. Tightly make up. You know, I won't make you a bottomless pit. Let's make up a certain amount, and that's all you have to give me. The Mazik can object to that as well. Amalei Kol Shagain, the B'Shat B'Nafshecha. You're going to cheap out. You're going to get sick. You're not going to get better. And who's going to get the blame for it? I'm going to get the blame for it. The Karli Shar Mazik, everyone's going to call me the Shar Mazik because you died. And meanwhile, you died because you pocketed the money and you didn't want to spend it on doctors. So I will pay the doctor and you pick the best doctor around. Zok more about the Tana. All of these nezek, tsar, ripui, shevas, and moishes, even though you're paying nezek, you pay these tashlumin as well. How do we know? This is what we referred to several times in the last couple of days. Amar Amar Kra, Petza, Tachas, Potza, Litein, Tsar, B'makam Nezek. Even when you're paying for Nezek, you also pay Tsar. Right? And the Gemara says, you know from that the opposite as well. That when you pay Tsar, you're obviously paying Nezek. In fact, the Gemara, Haimi Boyle, we need Petza, Tachas, Potza to teach us something else. L'Rabbi Shogin Kamezes Bonus Karotin. We learned that even if someone damages somebody by mistake, other Mud Olam will have to pay for it anyway. The Gemara, MK Nichtav Kra, Petza, Bipetza. Why did it say my Petza Tachas Potza, the extra Tachas? Shmami Notarti, we can extract two pieces of information. A that Echad Shogig Mezes Echad Onis Karotin, Libud number one, Libud number two, you pay Tsar even B'Makam Nezek. Rapapa Mishmei de Rava Amar Kra, the pasuk says, "Rapay with a double loshon, litein refuah b'makam nezek." So Tsar b'makam nezek is from Petza Tachas Potza. Ripui b'makam nezek is because it says Rapay. Frank Gemara Rapay. We've already exhausted all of the limudim available in it. Hami Boyle Licha, the Tana Devei Rabbi Shmuel. The Tana Devei Rabbi Shmuel, Rapay, Mikan Nitna, Rishus L'Roy for L'Rapos. Zok the Gemara Im Kain, if that's the only limud from that pasuk, Dichtav Kra V'Roife Yirafe, and the Roife will be Merape. But it says V'Rapoy Yirafe. Again, it's a little bit of a different type of lotion. We get an extra piece of information out of it. Shemami no litin refuah b'mokim nezek. Frankly, more about katami boyele lichida amoron. We need it for another halacha that we just learned at the bottom of Amar Aleph. Lemisni b'akraba ripui. We needed v'rapai rapay mentioned twice to tell you if the guy bandaged himself too much, you still pay for ripui. So Gemara imkain lemekra oy rapay rapay oy yirapay yirapay. Why is there a change if you're rapoy yirapay? Shemami na alite refuah b'makim nezek. So we actually have from rapoy yirapay. There's several unusual things about it. So we can actually extract three pieces of information. A, shenitn reshus l'roifel rapois. B is that you have to pay even if it's somewhat self-inflicted because he tied the bandage too tight. And C is you pay ripoy even b'makom nezek. Michlal. From what you're saying, it's a mashma the mishkachas lehu shaloi b'makom nezek. It's a mashma that you can have ripoy without nezek. Why would I ever need to do ripoy if there's no nezek? What would be the case be? I omitted something very important. I forgot to say something very important. Part of the Ramban's Rai is from v'rapoy yirapay. What do you mean v'rapoy yirapay? Isn't the question is, am I allowed to seek advice? Am I allowed to seek advice of a doctor? So how come it is a chayla yirapay? The chayla goes to get healed. Why is it addressing the doctor? Why isn't it addressing the patient? The teretz is, avada the chayla can go to a doctor if he's on the madrega that he needs to go see a doctor. He's not on that madrega of nevuah that he should go to a navi. Avada, that's the case. But who said the Raifa has a right to even engage in trying to heal the guy? There's so many dangers. It's not an exact science, right? Doctors are still practicing. They haven't figured it out yet, right? You practice medicine. Why? Sometimes a doctor can prescribe something and they can have a negative effect. It can cause problems. Or maybe the doctors, maybe the Mefarshim tells maybe if someone is sick, maybe if the Torah wants them to be sick, what right do I have to fight the Torah? And Tosfos at the bottom of Amar Aleph tell us, if someone hit him, that's not Shemayim, that someone did, there I can heal. But if a guy came down with a natural sickness, who said the doctors let him meddle in the Echanami? But it's a bigger chiddush that if it's a sickness, who said the Rav has a right to mix in? So for Rapo Yerapei, don't be so from. You have a right to heal. Don't worry about the risks because you have to do your best if you're properly trained, of course, and you don't have to worry that you're infringing on what Hashem wants to do. For Rapo Yerapei, the doctor has a right to heal.
Be from him healing.
Gewaltig. So Zok Gemara. So how how do you have it? So Tsar Kidakatoni. We had it in the Mishnah. Tsar Kaveh b'Shvud oy b'Mismar. Afil Ati Purnoi, which is Makom Sheinoy Sechabura. Ripui. How do you have ripui where there's no nezek? Maybe they have a koiv lemidi. Someone was already ill. Therefore, Visolik, and it was getting better, but I guess he wanted it to get better faster. So a doctor prescribed for him a medicine. But Isolosama Harifa, the doctor gave him a sharp medicine that would cause it to heal faster, which helped. So there's no nezek here. But the achvere lepisre, it changed his skin color. So now he needs to be healed from that skin color issue, but there's no nezek. The tzarich loish v'lasama lenkute gavna the bisre to restore the proper pigment in his skin. And Sheves, what would be a case of Sheves? The Hadke bin Drunya. He locked him up in the jail. So he held him back from doing his work. So he pays Sheves, but there's no other damage involved. Ubotle. And Boishes, how do you have Boishes without damage? The rock lebape. You spit in his face. That, of course, creates Boishes with no nezek. We'll stop here. Mez Hashem. We will catch up on Shabbos. Mitz Hashem. So everybody should have a wonderful, wonderful Shabbos. We should be zoichet a good Shabbos of Bishalach. We should be able to be free of all of the things that are hurting us, and we should be able to be zoichet to bizas hayam. Someone gave a bracha. You should be zoichet to die in the best possible way, like a mitzri. So someone asked, die like a mitzri? Said, sure. You give a guy a bracha that when a person dies, he'll know that all of his wealth is going to a very good place. Everybody who dies wants to be zoichet to die with a minion around him, right? You want to be able to die with a minion around him, and you want to be able to die quickly. So that's what the Mitzrayim got. They didn't have a minion; they had 600,000 Yidden. They had a huge minion by their patira. They knew that their money was definitely going to a good place, and it was quick and easy. So Mamela, He didn't know you should die like a mitzvah. We should live like Eden. We should live like Eden. We should be zoichet to Abishalach Pari. We should be zoichet to the delusion that they had from left Mitzrayim until Kabbalah Satira. Klal Yisrael shot up in stature. Beruch Nisha V'Gashmis. We should all be zoichet to that. The Bizis Hayam. Have a good Shabbos.